The Zephyrian war fleet hung in the void like a constellation of predatory death, their bioluminescent hulls pulsing with the rhythmic patterns that had terrorized 1,000 worlds. Admiral Kithera's mandibles clicked in satisfaction as she surveyed the holographic star charts floating before her command throne, her compound eyes reflecting the cold light of distant stars. Another primitive world to harvest, another species to add to their vast collection of livestock. 3,000 years of uncontested galactic dominance had taught the Zephyrians that the universe operated on simple principles. The strong consumed the weak, technology determined survival, and resistance was merely a delay before inevitable subjugation. Their chitinous empire stretched across 17 sectors, built on the bones of civilizations that had dared to believe they were the apex predators of their own worlds. "Target confirmed, Admiral," hissed her tactical officer, his translator implants converting the pheromone clicks of their native language into audible sound. "Third planet from the yellow star. Primitive electromagnetic communications, basic fusion technology, no evidence of faster-than-light capability. The inhabitants call themselves humans." Kithera's secondary arms traced ritual hunting patterns in the air, an ancient gesture performed before every harvest. Her primary consciousness reviewed the tactical data while her enhanced neural clusters calculated optimal resource extraction strategies. Standard procedure: demonstrate overwhelming superiority, break their communications infrastructure, collect breeding specimens for the biofoundries, then strip mine their planet for rare elements. Curious, she mused, noting anomalous readings in the system's outer reaches. Their electromagnetic spectrum shows unusual patterns, more sophisticated than typical pre-spaceflight species. Her science officer, a nervous creature whose previous posting had been the pacification of the crystal singers of Vortak Prime, chittered anxiously. "Merely primitive entertainment broadcasts, Admiral. Analysis indicates they broadcast fiction into space, stories of impossible technologies and imaginary conflicts. Classic pre-spaceflight delusion." What none of them realized was that those entertainment broadcasts had been carefully crafted disinformation, designed to mask the true scope of human technological advancement. For 30 years, humanity had been broadcasting fake signals while building something unprecedented in galactic history. A civilization designed from the ground up to kill apex predators. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, in a facility that officially didn't exist, General Marcus Rodriguez stood before a wall of monitors displaying tactical data that would have shattered the Zephyrians' fundamental assumptions about prey species. His weathered face remained impassive as his staff bustled around him with barely controlled tension. Not panic, but the focused intensity of predators preparing to spring a carefully laid trap. "Sir, they've taken out our GPS constellation," reported Colonel Elizabeth Kane, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were facing. "Communication satellites are going dark according to plan. They're following standard Zephyrian harvest protocols exactly as intelligence predicted." Rodriguez nodded slowly, his augmented neural implants processing data streams from across the solar system. 30 years of preparation had led to this moment. When humanity had first detected the Zephyrian expansion through captured alien transmissions, every government, corporation, and research institution on Earth had been quietly unified under a single directive: survive the coming storm by becoming something more dangerous than the predators hunting them. "Expected behavior," he said calmly. "What about the deep space arrays? Still hidden. Quantum masking is holding at 97% efficiency. The lunar installations read as natural rock formations to their sensors, and the asteroid belt factories are completely invisible." The general allowed himself a thin smile. While the Zephyrians had been conquering primitive worlds with overwhelming technological superiority, humanity had been doing something far more dangerous. They had been learning to cheat. Every captured transmission, every alien artifact recovered from crashed scouts, every piece of data gleaned from decades of careful observation had been fed into the most ambitious reverse engineering project in human history. "Activate the Soul Defense Grid," Rodriguez commanded, his words simultaneously transmitted through quantum-encrypted channels to installations across the solar system. "And send the message to Luna Base. The hunt begins now." The irony would have been lost on the Zephyrians, but Rodriguez appreciated it fully. They had come to harvest what they assumed was a helpless prey species, never realizing that humanity had spent 3 decades studying their psychology, their tactics, their technology, and their fundamental assumption that apex predators always won through superior force. Above Earth's atmosphere, the first wave of Zephyrian scout ships descended like falling stars, their adaptive shields shimmering with confidence born of 3 millennia of easy conquest. Admiral Kithara watched from her flagship as her forward elements moved into attack position, following invasion protocols that had never failed against any species they had encountered. They had done this dance 1,000 times before. Primitive species always reacted the same way. Panic as their communications failed, desperate attempts to negotiate from positions of weakness, and finally futile resistance with whatever crude weapons their limited technology could produce. The Harvest Fleet had contingencies for every possible response except one. They had never encountered a prey species that had been preparing for this exact moment for 30 years. What they got instead of panicked radio chatter was a coordinated barrage of relativistic projectiles fired from installations they couldn't detect, followed immediately by swarms of human fighters that moved with impossible precision and displayed acceleration curves that should have liquefied any biological pilot. The first Zephyrian scout exploded in a brilliant flash of superheated plasma as a tungsten rod traveling at 12% of light speed punched through its shields like they were made of paper. Then another. Then 12 more in perfect synchronization. Admiral Kithara's mandibles stopped clicking as her tactical displays showed impossible readings. These weren't primitive chemical rockets or crude nuclear weapons. These were weapons designed by beings who understood Zephyrian technology better than the Zephyrians themselves, deployed by fighters that moved like they were controlled by a single vast intelligence. For the first time in 3,000 years of galactic conquest, the Zephyrians had found prey that bit back. They just didn't realize they had stumbled into a trap set by predators who had spent their entire evolutionary history learning to kill things bigger, stronger, and more dangerous than themselves. The hunt had indeed begun, but Admiral Kithara was about to discover who was really the hunter, and who was the prey. Captain Elena Vasquez felt the neural interface surge to life as her consciousness merged with the tactical systems of her fighter, creating a hybrid entity that was both more and less than human. The enhancement surgeries had taken 3 months to complete and another year to fully integrate, transforming her nervous system into a biological quantum computer capable of processing targeting data at superhuman speeds. She wasn't alone in her transformation. Every pilot in the Seoul Defense Force had undergone similar modifications, turning them into living weapons perfectly adapted for 3-dimensional combat in the vacuum of space. The program had pushed the boundaries of human biology to its absolute limits, creating pilots who could withstand accelerations that would liquefy unmodified humans. Phoenix Squadron, weapons hot. She transmitted through the quantum communication network that connected every human fighter in the engagement. Target priority. Disable their command and control vessels first. Intelligence indicates Zephyrian formations collapse without central coordination. Her fighter screamed through the void at accelerations that registered as impossible on Zephyrian sensors, its hull plates shifting color to match the background radiation of space. The stealth technology was human innovation at its finest, not perfect invisibility, but adaptive camouflage that made targeting extremely difficult for sensors designed to track conventional spacecraft. The Zephyrian scout ships moved in the classic hunting formation that had served them well for 3 millennia, a dispersed pattern that allowed for mutual support while maximizing sensor coverage. It was a doctrine that had never failed against any species they had encountered, refined through countless successful conquests. What they hadn't anticipated was facing an enemy that had studied their tactics for 30 years and designed specific countermeasures for every maneuver in their operational handbook. Vasquez's fighter rolled inverted and dove toward the nearest Zephyrian vessel, her enhanced reflexes allowing her to process the incoming point defense fire and calculate evasion vectors in real time. The alien weapons tracked her movement with lethal precision, but human fighters had been designed to exploit a critical weakness in Zephyrian targeting systems. They couldn't adapt quickly enough to truly random movement patterns. Fox 3, weapons free, she called out as her fighter's AI achieved target lock and released a swarm of guided projectiles. But these weren't conventional missiles, they were self-modifying hunter-killers that could adapt their approach based on enemy countermeasures, learning and evolving during their brief flight time. The Zephyrian scout ship's defensive systems registered the incoming threats and responded with textbook countermeasures. Chaff clouds, decoy signals, and directed energy bursts designed to confuse or destroy approaching projectiles. For 3,000 years, these defenses had been more than adequate against any weapon system they had encountered. The human missiles simply analyzed the countermeasures, adapted their programming in microseconds, and continued their attack from unexpected vectors. The scout ship vanished in a brilliant explosion that painted the surrounding space in expanding patterns of superheated plasma. Aboard the Zephyrian flagship Eternal Hunger, Admiral Kithara watched her tactical displays with growing confusion as her forward scouts began disappearing with alarming regularity. The human fighters were moving in ways that defied her understanding of physics, pulling accelerations that should have crushed any biological pilot, executing maneuvers that required reaction times faster than nerve impulses could travel. "Impossible," she chittered, her mandibles clicking in agitation. "No biological species can withstand those G-forces. Their pilots should be dead." Her tactical officer, a seasoned veteran of a dozen conquest campaigns, was frantically analyzing sensor data with his secondary neural clusters while his primary consciousness tried to make sense of what they were seeing. "Admiral, we're reading massive quantum signatures from their vessels. Their technology, it appears to be based on principles we don't recognize." The admission sent ripples of unease through the bridge crew. The Zephyrians had built their empire on technological superiority, confident that their 3,000 years of scientific advancement made them invincible against any primitive species. The possibility that these humans possessed unknown technology was more terrifying than any conventional weapon. That was when the first kinetic strike arrived. The tungsten rod, accelerated to 12% of light speed by humanity's carefully hidden lunar mass drivers, appeared on Zephyrian sensors for exactly 0.3 seconds before impact. There was no time for evasive maneuvers, no possibility of intercept, no defense against a projectile moving at relativistic velocities. The Zephyrian heavy cruiser Blood Harvest didn't explode in any conventional sense. The kinetic energy release was so massive that the ship simply ceased to exist, its constituent atoms scattered across several cubic kilometers of space in a brilliant flash that momentarily outshone the local star. "By the Great Hive," Admiral Kithara whispered, her voice carrying the scent markers of genuine terror for the first time in her centuries of military service. "What manner of prey species wields such weapons?" Her question was answered as the main human fleet began to decloak around them. Commander Jackson Torres stood on the bridge of the UHSV Retribution, watching as Earth's secret armada revealed itself in a carefully choreographed display of overwhelming force. For 30 years, humanity had been building this fleet in the hidden spaces of their solar system. Not just ships, but an entirely new philosophy of warfare based on cooperation, adaptation, and the systematic exploitation of enemy weaknesses. The vessels emerging from stealth were unlike anything in the galactic database. Their hulls were smooth curves that seemed to bend light around them. Their weapon systems were integrated seamlessly into their superstructure, and their movement patterns spoke of a unified intelligence coordinating every aspect of the engagement. "All vessels, execute Pattern Omega," Torres commanded through the quantum communication network that linked every human ship, fighter, and installation in the system. "Show them what happens when they mistake apex predators for livestock." The human fleet struck with the coordinated precision of a pack of wolves that had been enhanced by quantum physicists and armed by a civilization that had spent 30 years preparing for this exact moment. Their weapons weren't just more advanced than Zephyrian technology. They were designed specifically to counter every defensive system the aliens possessed. Plasma beams that could adapt their frequency to penetrate shields, guided projectiles that learned from each near miss, and kinetic weapons that struck with the force of stellar phenomena. But more than their individual capabilities, it was their coordination that made the human fleet truly terrifying. Where the Zephyrians fought as individual ships supporting each other, the humans fought as a single distributed organism with hundreds of components working in perfect harmony. As the first wave of Zephyrian vessels began to burn in Earth's orbit, Admiral Kithara finally understood the magnitude of her species' error. They had encountered something that had never existed in galactic history: a prey species that had evolved into apex predators without losing their pack-hunting instincts. The Zephyrians had ruled the galaxy for 3 millennia because they were the most dangerous individual predators in known space. But they had just encountered a species that had learned to make the whole greater than the sum of its parts, turning cooperation itself into the ultimate weapon. The hunt had begun, but the roles of predator and prey were not what anyone had expected. Dr. Rachel Morgan had spent the last 30 years in facilities so classified that their existence was known only to a handful of world leaders and the AI systems that managed global security protocols. While the Zephyrians had been conquering the galaxy through superior individual technology, humanity had been pursuing something far more revolutionary: the complete integration of biological consciousness with quantum communication networks. Entanglement synchronization holding steady at 99.7% efficiency across all active nodes, she reported to General Rodriguez from her command center buried 3 kilometers beneath the Swiss Alps. The facility around her hummed with the barely audible resonance of quantum processors operating at temperatures approaching absolute zero, creating a technological symphony that represented humanity's greatest scientific achievement. The quantum communication network was humanity's true secret weapon. Not faster ships or more powerful guns, but the ability to transform every human soldier, pilot, and commander into components of a single vast distributed intelligence. Where other species relied on hierarchy, individual skill, and the limitations of speed-of-light communication, humans had created something unprecedented: a collective consciousness that could adapt and evolve in real time across interstellar distances. Captain Vasquez felt the network's influence flowing through her enhanced nervous system like liquid electricity as she led her squadron in a coordinated strike against the second wave of Zephyrian attackers. Her consciousness existed simultaneously in her own body, her fighters' control systems, and the collective awareness of every other pilot in the engagement. She wasn't just flying a single ship. She was a neuron in a vast brain that encompassed the entire human fleet. Contact bearing 27 Mark IV. Her wingman's thoughts materialized directly in her enhanced consciousness, complete with tactical analysis, threat assessment, and suggested response vectors. The information didn't come through radio transmission or even quantum communication. It emerged from the shared consciousness space that connected every enhanced human in the solar system. Vasquez's response flowed back through the network without conscious thought. Refined targeting data, coordinated attack patterns, optimal timing sequences. 12 human fighters moved as a single organism, their individual AIs merging into a collective intelligence that could process thousands of variables simultaneously while adapting to enemy countermeasures in real time. The Zephyrian bioship they targeted was a magnificent example of their species' biological engineering. A living vessel that could adapt its defenses, regenerate damage, and learn from combat experience. It had evolved over centuries of warfare to be the perfect individual predator, capable of matching or exceeding any single opponent. What it couldn't handle was facing 12 opponents who shared the same mind. The human fighters struck from vectors that maximized structural damage while minimizing the bioship's ability to adapt its defenses. Each pilot's actions were perfectly coordinated with the others, creating a complex attack pattern that exceeded the processing capabilities of any individual consciousness. The Zephyrian vessel died in seconds, its biological systems overwhelmed by precision strikes that targeted vulnerabilities faster than they could evolve countermeasures. Admiral Kithara watched her fleet burn and felt something her species had never experienced in 3 millennia of conquest: the terror of being outmatched by a superior predator. Her tactical displays showed impossible coordination patterns. These humans fought with a unity that transcended individual capability, anticipating her moves, adapting to her tactics, and responding with the precision of a single vast intelligence. "How are they coordinating their attacks?" she demanded, her voice carrying the pheromone markers of barely controlled panic. "Our analysis indicates no faster-than-light communication systems, yet they respond to our maneuvers before we complete them." Her science officer, his secondary neural clusters working at maximum capacity to process the incoming data, could only offer increasingly impossible theories. "Admiral, their coordination patterns suggest some form of instantaneous information sharing. But the quantum signatures, they're using entanglement communication on a scale we've never encountered. Every ship, every fighter, possibly every individual human appears to be connected to a single network. The implications were staggering. The Zephyrians had built their empire on the principle that superior individual capability would always triumph over inferior numbers. They had never encountered a species that could truly act as one organism while maintaining the tactical flexibility of independent units. As if responding to her growing understanding, the human reserve forces began to emerge from their hiding places throughout the solar system. Ships decloaked from the asteroid belt, massive installations revealed themselves on previously undetected moons, and the true scope of humanity's preparation became terrifyingly clear. What emerged wasn't just a fleet, it was a single distributed war machine that encompassed an entire star system. Every human vessel, from the smallest fighter to kilometer-long dreadnoughts, moved with perfect coordination. Their tactics evolved in real time as they analyzed Zephyrian responses, learning and adapting faster than any individual consciousness could process. Commander Torres felt the collective intelligence flowing through his enhanced neural pathways as he coordinated the systematic destruction of the invading force. The quantum network allowed him to simultaneously manage fleet movements, individual ship tactics, and strategic planning while remaining aware of every human consciousness connected to the system. Zephyrian flagship attempting to retreat to minimum safe jump distance. His tactical AI reported, its own consciousness seamlessly integrated with the human collective. Recommend implementing closing net protocol to prevent intelligence gathering by surviving vessels. Torres smiled with an expression that combined human warmth with inhuman calculation. Negative on prisoner protocols. No one who comes to harvest humanity gets to leave and report our capabilities. Execute total elimination sequence. Across the solar system, human vessels moved to surround the fleeing Zephyrians with mathematical precision. This wasn't about capture or negotiation. Humanity had made a fundamental decision that any species aggressive enough to attempt conquest represented an existential threat that required complete elimination. The quantum network processed millions of trajectory calculations, analyzed escape vectors, and coordinated intercept courses faster than any individual consciousness could comprehend. What appeared to the Zephyrians as overwhelming numerical superiority was actually something far more terrifying. A single intelligence with access to unlimited processing power and perfect coordination. Admiral Kithra's final transmission, broadcast on all frequencies as her flagship was systematically dismantled by precision strikes, carried a warning that would never reach her homeworld. We encountered apex predators who hunt as one mind. They are beyond our understanding. They are. The message cut off as the eternal hunger joined the expanding debris field that had once been the pride of Zephyrian military engineering. Dr. Morgan, monitoring the engagement from her quantum facility, observed the network's performance with professional satisfaction. The collective consciousness had operated flawlessly, allowing humanity to coordinate defensive actions across an entire star system while adapting to enemy tactics in real time. But more importantly, the network had proven something that would reshape humanity's understanding of their own potential. When individual consciousness was properly integrated with quantum communication systems, the resulting collective intelligence wasn't just additive. It was exponentially superior to the sum of its parts. The galaxy's apex predators had discovered something they never knew existed. A species that had evolved beyond individual competition into true cooperative transcendence, turning the limitations of biological consciousness into the foundation for something genuinely post-human. The age of isolated apex predators was ending. The age of collective intelligence had begun. 6 months after the complete annihilation of the Zephyrian harvest fleet, humanity's transformation from a single-world species to galactic apex predators was proceeding with terrifying efficiency. The secret installations had evolved into command centers for an expanding network of military bases, research facilities, and manufacturing complexes that stretched across the outer solar system. Every asteroid had been surveyed, every moon evaluated for strategic potential, and the space between planets filled with sensor networks that could detect incoming threats at interstellar distances. Dr. Morgan's quantum communication network had grown beyond her most optimistic projections, evolving from a military coordination system into something unprecedented in galactic history. A species-wide consciousness that could think, plan, and act across light years of space without any delay. The implications were staggering. Humanity had effectively transcended the limitations of physics that constrained every other known civilization. General Rodriguez stood in the newly constructed Strategic Command Center on Luna, its walls lined with holographic displays showing human expansion beyond the Sol system. The defensive phase of their evolution was complete. Now came the next step: active hunting of every species that might pose a threat to humanity's survival. "Report from the Alpha Centauri expedition?" he requested, his enhanced neural implants automatically connecting him to the quantum network's vast data streams. Colonel Martinez, her silver neural interfaces gleaming under the chamber's blue lighting, responded with the flat precision of someone accessing the collective intelligence of an entire species. Second Zephyrian Hive Fleet located and neutralized in the Proxima system. Total elimination achieved with 0 human casualties. Intelligence analysis indicates they were responding to a distress beacon from the original Harvest Fleet. Rodriguez nodded with satisfaction. The Zephyrians had made the mistake of sending reinforcements, allowing humanity to eliminate another potential threat while gathering valuable intelligence about their military structure. Each engagement provided data about alien psychology, technology, and tactical doctrine that fed directly into humanity's expanding strategic database. "Additional contacts?" he asked. 17 distinct alien civilizations detected within 50 light-years of Sol. Martinez continued, her consciousness simultaneously accessing reconnaissance data from dozens of deep space probes. "Preliminary analysis indicates at least 12 are apex predator species with histories of conquest and subjugation. Recommend immediate initiation of Phase 2 expansion protocols." The meeting chamber fell silent as the implications settled over the assembled military leadership. Humanity had discovered that their local region of the galaxy was a hunting ground populated by multiple apex predator species, each maintaining dominance over their own territory while engaging in complex hierarchical relationships with their neighbors. "Begin Phase 2, Rodriguez commanded, his words automatically transmitted through quantum channels to human installations across multiple star systems. "It's time to introduce ourselves to our neighbors." The Drachmarie hegemony had ruled 12 star systems for over 4,000 years before their conquest by the Zephyrians 3 centuries ago. Their crystalline ships, powered by harvested stellar plasma and armed with weapons that could fracture space-time itself, had once been the terror of lesser species. Now they served as slave soldiers in the galactic hierarchy, their proud warrior culture reduced to mere tools for their overlord's expansion. Warlord Kreshtar had been planning a desperate rebellion when the impossible reports began filtering through underground resistance networks. Entire Zephyrian fleets were vanishing without trace near a previously unremarkable yellow star. No wreckage, no survivors, no explanation beyond empty space where hundreds of the galaxy's most feared warships had been operating. When the human fleet materialized at the edge of Drachmarie space, emerging from quantum stealth fields that rendered them invisible to conventional sensors, Kreshtar faced a decision that would determine the fate of his species. The alien vessels moved with a coordination that exceeded even legendary Zephyrian swarm tactics, their formation patterns speaking of a unified intelligence that operated beyond individual consciousness. "This is Warlord Kreshtar of the Drachmarie hegemony," he transmitted toward the approaching fleet, his crystalline voice modulated through translation protocols that had been standard for millennia. "Are you the ones who destroyed the Zephyrian harvest fleets?" The response came in perfect Drachmarie, translated by human artificial intelligences that had been analyzing intercepted communications for decades while developing comprehensive psychological profiles of every known species. "We are humanity. Our analysis indicates your species was enslaved by the Zephyrians. We offer you a choice. Join us in hunting those who oppressed you, or be classified as their allies and face the consequences." Kreshtar's crystal core pulsed with conflicting emotions as he processed the implications. These humans spoke with the direct confidence of apex predators. Not the diplomatic language of civilized discourse, but the straightforward threat assessment of creatures that had never learned to fear anything in their evolutionary history. "What do you offer in exchange for our allegiance?" he asked, his warrior instincts recognizing the brutal honesty in their approach. "Freedom to hunt those who enslaved you," came the immediate reply. "Access to technologies that will make your species more dangerous than you were before conquest. and instruction in the methods required to kill gods. The last phrase sent resonance patterns through Kreshtar's crystalline structure that spoke of possibilities beyond his species' wildest dreams. For 3 centuries, the Drakmari had dreamed of revenge against their Zephyrian masters, but the technological gap had seemed insurmountable. These humans offered something different. Not just liberation, but the power to become apex predators themselves. Captain Vasquez, her consciousness now distributed across multiple fighter craft simultaneously, led the joint human Drakmari strike force toward the Zephyrian Regional Command Center at Kepler 442. Her awareness existed in multiple quantum states, simultaneously coordinating fleet movements, analyzing enemy positions, processing intelligence data, and experiencing the raw excitement of Drakmari warriors finally given the chance to strike back at their oppressors. The Zephyrian fortress system had been considered impregnable for over 2 centuries, protected by overlapping defensive systems, gravity manipulation technology, and the largest concentration of bioships in the sector. It represented everything the Zephyrians had learned about fortress construction during their millennia of conquest. What they hadn't anticipated was facing an enemy that could coordinate attacks across multiple dimensions simultaneously, while integrating the unique capabilities of allied species into a single tactical framework. Drakmari crystal lance vessels execute precision strikes on gravitational anchor points, flowed through the quantum network to Kreshtar's consciousness. Human fighters provide interference patterns. Kinetic bombardment platforms target command structures. All units synchronize for maximum psychological impact. The battle lasted 12 minutes and 17 seconds. When it ended, the Kepler 442 system belonged to the human-led alliance, and the Drakmari had their first taste of what it meant to hunt their former masters with the backing of superior technology and unified tactics. Kreshtar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching human engineers already working to integrate Drakmari crystal technology with quantum communication systems. These creatures didn't just win battles. They absorbed every useful capability they encountered, constantly evolving their technological and tactical capabilities. "How many species have you contacted?" he asked Colonel Martinez, who served as humanity's liaison to their growing alliance of liberated civilizations. Her enhanced eyes flickered with data streams flowing from across the galaxy as she accessed the collective knowledge of human intelligence operations. 23 species contacted, 15 have joined our alliance, 4 chose to fight alongside their former oppressors, and 4 attempted to maintain neutrality. And the neutral ones? Martinez's expression never changed, but her voice carried the absolute certainty of a species that had learned to think in terms of total war. There is no neutrality when facing existential threats. Species that assisted apex predators, even passively, represent potential future dangers. We eliminate problems before they can evolve into catastrophic risks. The galaxy was learning that humanity had introduced a new paradigm to the ancient cycle of conquest and subjugation. The concept of total war waged by a collective intelligence that could coordinate across interstellar distances and integrate the capabilities of multiple species into a single overwhelming force. The age of individual apex predators maintaining separate territories was ending. The age of unified predator consciousness had begun. Admiral Kithera's successor, Hive Commander Zekth, received the final transmission from Kepler 442 in his command chamber deep within the Zephyrian home system of Zirion Prime. The message was brief but carried pheromone markers of absolute terror that sent ripples of unease through every Zephyrian who detected it. The humans fight as one mind. They turn our slaves against us. They are beyond our understanding. They are coming. For the first time in 3,000 years of uncontested galactic dominance, the Great Hive Council convened in emergency session. 8-foot-tall apex predators with chitinous exoskeletons that had evolved over millennia of conquest gathered in the ancient ceremonial chamber where their ancestors had planned the subjugation of hundreds of species. The irony that they now met to discuss their own potential extinction was lost on none of them. "Status report on territorial losses," demanded Elder Hythak, her ancient mandibles clicking with barely controlled fury. At over 2,000 years old, she had personally overseen the conquest of 47 star systems and had never experienced military defeat. ZTH's holographic displays painted a picture of catastrophic territorial collapse that defied everything the Zephyrians understood about warfare. 23 systems lost in 8 months, Elder. But the implications extend far beyond simple territorial conquest. These humans are systematically dismantling our entire hierarchy of control. The displays showed something unprecedented in galactic history. Former slave species not just rebelling against their overlords, but coordinating their rebellions across interstellar distances with precision that exceeded Zephyrian military capabilities. The Drachmari were striking Zephyrian installations with crystal lance weapons enhanced by human technology. The Vorthak had emerged from their crystalline ships to share harmonic warfare techniques that could shatter bioship hulls. Even the traditionally pacifist Kethmori had contributed their hive mind coordination abilities to the growing alliance. "What is their strategic objective?" asked Elder Hythak, her compound eyes processing tactical data with the enhanced neural clusters that made Zephyrian leadership so formidable. "Complete species elimination or unconditional surrender," Sektich replied, his voice carrying the scent markers of disbelief. "Intelligence analysis indicates they consider our entire civilization to be a plague that must be eradicated or fundamentally reformed. They have made no attempt at negotiation, territorial compromise, or traditional dominance hierarchy establishment. The concept was alien to every Zephyrian present. In 3 millennia of conquest, they had always maintained some form of hierarchical relationship with conquered species. Slaves, vassals, tribute providers, or simply livestock. The idea of an apex predator species that sought total elimination of competitors was beyond their comprehension. "Mobilization status?" Elder Hythak demanded. "Every reserve fleet has been activated," ZTH reported, his secondary neural clusters accessing data from across the Zephyrian Empire. 4,000 capital ships, 32,000 support vessels, and 2.3 million fighter craft. "We are committing our entire military capability to a single decisive engagement." What Elder Hythak failed to understand was that humanity had been anticipating exactly this response for months. Dr. Morgan, now permanently integrated with quantum communication networks that spanned over 100 star systems, monitored Zephyrian fleet movements from her expanded facility complex beneath Earth's Pacific Ocean. The scope of her consciousness had grown beyond anything imaginable to baseline humanity. She existed simultaneously in biological form, quantum processing substrates, and the distributed intelligence of millions of enhanced humans across the galaxy. Zephyrian mobilization proceeding according to tactical projections, she reported to the assembled leadership council. Her words transmitted instantaneously to human commanders, AI systems, and allied species representatives across their expanding territory. Total enemy strength estimated at 4,847 capital ships and supporting elements. They are converging on the Zirian Nebula for what appears to be their final strategic gambit. General Rodriguez, his consciousness now distributed across multiple command centers simultaneously, smiled with the cold satisfaction of a predator whose trap was finally being sprung. "Excellent. We wanted to face their complete military capability in a single engagement rather than hunt them across the galaxy for decades." The strategic implications were staggering. By committing their entire fleet to one decisive battle, the Zephyrians were offering humanity the opportunity to eliminate their species' military capability permanently. It was a decision that spoke to their fundamental misunderstanding of what they were facing. Warlord Kreshtar, his crystalline form now enhanced with human quantum technology that made him exponentially more dangerous than his original biological design, resonated with anticipation as he reviewed battle plans. The Great Convergence begins. Every species they enslaved will participate in their judgment. The Zirian Nebula was chosen as the battlefield with careful calculation. The massive stellar nursery provided both tactical advantages and symbolic significance. It was where young stars were born, making it appropriate for the birth of a new galactic order. The gas clouds and gravitational anomalies would limit the Zephyrians' ability to use their superior numbers effectively while providing cover for human stealth technology. Captain Vasquez, her consciousness now distributed across 17 different fighter craft simultaneously, while maintaining awareness of fleet-wide tactical situations, spoke the truth that would define the coming engagement. This isn't about revenge against the Zephyrians. This is about establishing a fundamental change in how intelligent species interact across the galaxy. When the two fleets finally faced each other across the glowing expanse of stellar gases and newborn stars, the scope exceeded anything in recorded galactic history. The Zephyrian Armada represented the accumulated military power of 3,000 years of technological development and conquest, bioships that could adapt to any threat, weapons that manipulated spacetime itself, and coordination systems refined through countless successful campaigns. Opposing them was the human-led alliance. Fewer than 900 ships representing 37 different species, each vessel connected through quantum entanglement to create a single distributed intelligence that could process tactical information and coordinate responses at the speed of thought across interstellar distances. The disparity in numbers was obvious to any observer. What wasn't apparent was that each allied vessel represented a node in a network that transcended traditional limitations of command and control, creating something that had never existed in galactic history. A fleet that thought and acted as a single organism while maintaining the tactical flexibility of independent units. Elder Hythak, commanding from her massive bioship Eternal Dominion at the center of the Zephyrian formation, felt the first stirrings of doubt as her sensors analyzed the enemy fleet's movement patterns. They weren't just coordinated, they were perfectly orchestrated, with each ship acting as a component of a vast thinking weapon that could adapt and evolve faster than any individual consciousness could process. "Begin the final assault," she commanded, her voice carrying across quantum communication channels to every Zephyrian vessel in the formation. "Show these upstart mammals what 3 millennia of perfected warfare can accomplish." The Zephyrian fleet attacked like a living organism, their bioships pulsing with bioluminescent fury as they unleashed every weapon system they had developed during their long reign as apex predators. Energy beams capable of cracking planetary crusts, guided projectile swarms that could think and adapt independently, viral programs designed to corrupt enemy technology, and gravitational manipulation weapons that could tear apart spacetime itself. The human-led alliance responded with something the galaxy had never witnessed: warfare conducted by a single massively distributed intelligence that could simultaneously coordinate the unique abilities of multiple species while adapting to enemy tactics in real time. What happened in the first 30 seconds of the engagement would be studied by military historians for millennia, assuming any Zephyrians survived to write the histories. The Battle of Zirian Nebula had begun, and with it, the final transformation of galactic civilization from individual apex predator dominance to cooperative transcendence. The Battle of Zirian Nebula lasted 4 hours, 17 minutes, and 32 seconds. When the stellar gases finally cleared and the last echoes of weapons fire faded into cosmic background radiation, the fundamental structure of galactic civilization had been permanently altered. Where once the Zephyrian Empire had controlled 17 sectors through 3 millennia of technological supremacy, now only expanding debris fields marked the end of their reign as apex predators. Elder Hythak's final moments came as her massive bioship Eternal Dominion was systematically dismantled by coordinated strikes from vessels representing 29 different species, all moving with the mathematical precision of a single vast organism. Her last transmission, recorded by human intelligence networks and preserved for historical analysis, would become the epitaph for an entire era of galactic history. How do you kill a god? You become something greater. Captain Vasquez, her consciousness now distributed across multiple bodies and ships simultaneously, watched the destruction of the Zephyrian fleet with the cold satisfaction of an apex predator completing a successful hunt. But unlike every previous galactic conqueror in recorded history, humanity's victory came with an unprecedented element: the offer of mercy for those who chose surrender over extinction. "Attention all surviving Zephyrian vessels," she broadcast across every communication frequency, her words simultaneously translated into 17 different alien languages by the collective intelligence network. "You have 60 seconds to surrender unconditionally and prepare for integration into the new galactic order. Those who comply will be given the opportunity to evolve beyond your species' predatory limitations. Those who continue resistance will be eliminated." The concept of mercy from victorious apex predators was so alien to Zephyrian psychology that many ships continued fighting simply because they couldn't comprehend the alternative. In their 3,000-year history of conquest, they had never offered quarter to defeated enemies, and they couldn't conceive of receiving it themselves. Nearly half of the surviving vessels chose surrender over annihilation, making a choice their species had never offered any of their own victims. General Rodriguez, monitoring the engagement from the Luna Strategic Command Center, felt the weight of humanity's transformation settling over him like a gravitational field. They hadn't just won a military victory, they had fundamentally redefined the concept of interstellar civilization by proving that cooperation could triumph over individual superiority. Comprehensive status report from all sectors, he requested, his enhanced neural implants automatically accessing data streams from across human-controlled space. Dr. Morgan, her consciousness now permanently integrated with quantum networks that connected millions of beings across hundreds of star systems, responded with information that flowed directly into his enhanced mind. Zephyrian military capability reduced by 89%. 67 species have submitted formal requests for alliance membership in the past 12 hours. The Galactic Trade Consortium has offered complete economic integration. We are receiving diplomatic overtures from previously unknown civilizations in the outer spiral arms. The transformation was occurring faster than anyone had anticipated. Humanity had evolved from a single-planet species facing extinction to the organizing principle of a galactic civilization that spanned multiple sectors. But unlike previous apex predators who had maintained dominance through fear and superior technology, they were creating something unprecedented. A cooperative empire based on mutual benefit rather than subjugation. Warlord Kreshtar stood in the ruins of Elder Hythak's command chamber, his crystalline form now enhanced with human quantum technology and directly connected to the collective intelligence network. For the first time in 3 centuries of slavery, he felt something his warrior culture had never experienced under Zephyrian rule. Genuine hope for a future that extended beyond endless conflict and oppression. "What happens to our species now?" he asked Colonel Martinez, who had become humanity's primary liaison for integrating former slave civilizations into the alliance structure. Martinez, her enhanced eyes processing data streams from across the galaxy while simultaneously participating in strategic planning sessions on 17 different worlds, smiled with an expression that combined human warmth with inhuman computational capability. "Now we build something that has never existed in galactic history. A civilization based on cooperative evolution between apex predator species rather than domination by a single empire." The concept represented a revolutionary departure from every model of interstellar governance that had existed since the first species achieved faster-than-light travel. Instead of one civilization imposing its will on subjugated others, humanity was creating a network where each member species contributed their unique evolutionary advantages to collective survival and expansion. The Drachmarie provided their warrior culture and crystal-based energy manipulation technologies. The Vorthak contributed their mastery of harmonic sciences and crystalline computational systems. The Kethmori offered their collective consciousness coordination abilities and biological engineering expertise. Even reformed Zephyrian survivors brought valuable knowledge of bioship construction and adaptive technology development. But it was humanity that provided the crucial innovation that made it all possible. The quantum communication network that allowed different species to think and act as a single organism while maintaining their individual cultural identities and biological characteristics. 6 months after the Battle of Zirian Nebula, the new galactic order was taking shape with unprecedented speed. Former Zephyrian slave worlds were being liberated and invited to join the alliance as equal partners rather than subjects. Trade routes that had been monopolized by apex predators for millennia were opening to all member species. Scientific knowledge was being shared freely across the quantum network, leading to technological advances that surpassed anything achieved through conquest and forced research. Captain Vasquez, now serving as the first director of interspecies military coordination, reviewed reports from across alliance space that painted a picture of transformation beyond anything the galaxy had previously experienced. Instead of the traditional predator-prey dynamic that had defined interstellar relations for millennia, they were creating something entirely new. A post-scarcity civilization based on cooperative advancement. "Threat assessment from uncontrolled territories?" she requested through the quantum network. The response came from multiple intelligence sources simultaneously, representing the collective analytical capabilities of dozens of species. 19 independent apex predator civilizations detected beyond current alliance borders. Estimated time to contact ranges from 8 months to 3 years. Recommended approach: diplomatic outreach with comprehensive military readiness protocols. Vasquez nodded, understanding that the pattern would repeat across the galaxy. Humanity and their allies would encounter other apex predator species, offer them the choice between cooperative evolution and extinction, and gradually expand their network of collaborative civilization until it encompassed all intelligent life in the galaxy. But something unexpected was happening that none of them had fully anticipated. The quantum network wasn't just facilitating communication and coordination, it was driving genuine evolutionary change. Each species was learning from the others at a genetic and cultural level, adopting beneficial traits and capabilities, becoming something greater than they had been in isolation. Humanity itself was transforming most dramatically. The neural enhancements that had begun as military necessity were becoming permanent evolutionary adaptations. Children were being born with natural quantum sensitivity, able to interface with the collective network from birth without requiring technological augmentation. The species that had once feared extinction was evolving into something that transcended traditional biological limitations. Dr. Morgan, her research now focused on projects that approached the theoretical limits of physics itself, contemplated the implications as she monitored the network's exponential growth. They weren't just changing galactic civilization, they were fundamentally altering the nature of conscious life itself, creating the foundation for intelligence that could span star systems and persist across geological timescales. The galaxy's former apex predators were discovering that the age of individual dominance had ended. The age of collective transcendence had begun, and at its center was a species that had learned to turn competition into cooperation, transforming the ancient cycle of conquest into collaborative evolution. 2 years after the Battle of Zirian Nebula, Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the observation deck of the UHSV Transcendence, watching the construction of humanity's greatest achievement, a Dyson sphere around the binary stars of the Kepler-16 system. But this wasn't merely a human engineering project. It represented the collaborative effort of 63 different species, each contributing technologies and capabilities that would have been impossible for any single civilization to develop independently. Her reflection in the reinforced transparisteel revealed the extent of her transformation. The neural interfaces were now seamlessly integrated with her biological systems, creating a hybrid consciousness that existed simultaneously across multiple dimensions of reality. She was present on this ship, coordinating fleet movements across 23 star systems, participating in philosophical debates with Kethmori collective minds, and designing new technologies with Vortak crystal singers, all while maintaining her individual identity within the vast network of Alliance consciousness. This was what humanity had become. Not conquerors or gods, but gardeners of intelligence, cultivating and nurturing the growth of cooperative consciousness across the galaxy, while preserving the unique characteristics that made each species valuable to the collective. Final report from the Galactic Core expeditions? She requested, her enhanced consciousness automatically connecting to data streams from the most distant human exploration fleets. Commander Jackson Torres materialized as a quantum projection on the bridge, his evolution having taken him beyond physical form entirely. His consciousness existed purely within the quantum network, capable of manifesting anywhere the Alliance had established infrastructure while processing information at scales that approached planetary computation levels. Contact established with the Eternal Dominion in the Sagittarius core. His voice resonated directly through her auditory enhancement systems. They represent the oldest known apex predator civilization, over 50,000 years of continuous expansion. They are profoundly resistant to our integration proposals. Vasquez felt the collective consciousness of the Alliance analyzing the situation in real time, 63 species considering the problem simultaneously while sharing insights and developing solutions at quantum processing speeds. The answer emerged within nanoseconds of the query being posed. They embody the ultimate expression of the old paradigm, she concluded, her analysis flowing seamlessly through the network to allied commanders across the galaxy. Individual dominance refined across geological timescales. They cannot conceive of collective strength as anything other than evolutionary weakness to be exploited. General Rodriguez materialized as another holographic presence, his consciousness simultaneously coordinating the defense of 47 star systems, overseeing the integration of 17 newly contacted species, and planning humanity's next evolutionary leap toward post-biological existence. Intelligence estimates suggest the Eternal Dominion controls over 800 systems and commands approximately 50,000 capital ships. He reported, his enhanced awareness processing threat assessments from across known space. They represent the largest remaining concentration of traditional apex predator philosophy in this galactic arm. Dr. Morgan's voice joined the conversation from her research complex that now spanned multiple space habitats orbiting Alpha Centauri, where she worked on projects that challenged the fundamental laws of physics. Quantum resonance analysis indicates their civilization is based on rigid hierarchical consciousness that could be vulnerable to network infiltration. However, their age and technological sophistication present unprecedented challenges. The strategy that emerged from their collective analysis represented the ultimate evolution of human tactical thinking. Instead of meeting overwhelming force with superior force, they would demonstrate the evolutionary advantages of cooperative consciousness by offering the Eternal Dominion's subjugated species something that had never existed in their 50,000-year history: genuine partnership in a civilization that valued cooperation over domination. 6 months later, the first Alliance diplomatic mission arrived at the edge of Eternal Dominion space. The vessel itself was a masterpiece of collaborative engineering that transcended traditional technological limitations. Human quantum drives operating in perfect harmony with Drachmary crystal matrices, Vortak harmonic resonance systems integrated with Kethmori biological processing networks, and Zephyrian bioadaptation technology enhanced by the collective intelligence of the quantum network. The ship represented everything the old galactic order had never achieved: the seamless integration of apex predator technologies into something that exceeded the capabilities of its individual components, while maintaining the unique characteristics that made each contribution valuable. The Eternal Dominion's response was predictably violent and overwhelming. Their war fleets, refined through 50 millennia of conquest, attacked with coordinated brutality that surpassed anything humanity had previously encountered. These were apex predators who had perfected the art of individual dominance across geological timescales. What they encountered was a diplomatic vessel that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, protected by adaptive defense systems that learned from each attack, and crewed by beings whose consciousness spanned interstellar distances while accessing the collective intelligence of an entire galactic civilization. The mission wasn't destroyed. It simply phased out of conventional reality and began broadcasting directly to every oppressed species within Dominion space, offering them something that had never existed in their civilization's history. Join the Alliance and learn what it means to transcend the predator-prey paradigm forever. The rebellion that followed made the Zephyrian War appear insignificant by comparison. 147 subjugated species rose simultaneously across 800 star systems, their actions coordinated by quantum communication networks that the Eternal Dominion couldn't detect, understand, or disrupt. Their ancient empire collapsed not through military conquest, but through evolutionary transcendence. Their subjects simply outgrew the need to be dominated. Warlord Kreshtar, now serving as the Alliance's Director of Species Integration, welcomed the first refugees from the Dominion collapse at processing facilities throughout Alliance space. His crystalline form had evolved far beyond its original biological specifications, incorporating quantum processing capabilities, biological adaptation systems, and direct neural interfaces to the collective consciousness network. Integration statistics? He requested from the processing AI that managed refugee coordination across multiple star systems. 237 billion individuals from 147 species, came the response. Estimated integration time: 18 months for basic network connectivity, 5 years for complete cultural adaptation to cooperative consciousness paradigms. The numbers represented the largest integration event in galactic history, but the Alliance had become expert at rapid assimilation of new species into cooperative consciousness networks. They had learned that intelligence, once liberated from the constraints of individual survival competition, could adapt and evolve with extraordinary speed. The most remarkable transformation continued to be humanity itself. The species that had begun this journey as barely spacefaring mammals had evolved into something unprecedented in galactic history. Distributed intelligences capable of existing simultaneously across multiple substrates while maintaining individual identity within collective consciousness networks. Captain Vasquez, her awareness now spanning hundreds of manifestations throughout Alliance territory, contemplated the implications of their achievements as she monitored construction of the galaxy's first true collective intelligence substrate, a quantum computing network that would encompass entire star clusters and allow millions of species to participate in genuinely unified consciousness while preserving their unique cultural and biological characteristics. They had solved the fundamental evolutionary problem that had driven intelligent species toward conflict since consciousness first emerged: the competition between individual survival and collective benefit. By creating systems where individual consciousness could contribute to collective intelligence while maintaining personal identity, they had transcended the evolutionary pressures that had forced species to compete rather than cooperate. Galactic civilization was transforming beyond recognition. Ancient territorial conflicts were becoming obsolete as species learned to share resources through quantum coordination networks. The concept of war itself was evolving from violent competition to collaborative problem-solving exercises. Trade was being replaced by direct resource sharing based on collective optimization algorithms. Dr. Morgan, her research now approaching the theoretical limits of what was possible within known physics, delivered the final assessment to the Alliance Council. Integration of former Eternal Dominion territories proceeding ahead of all projections. We are detecting quantum signatures from previously unknown civilizations in adjacent galaxies. Estimated contact time: 2 years. The implications were profound. Humanity and their allies were approaching the ultimate phase of conscious evolution. Contact with whatever apex predator civilizations existed beyond their own galaxy, where ancient species might have had millions of years to perfect individual dominance across cosmic scales. But humanity was no longer the species that had faced extinction from a single harvest fleet. They had become something that transcended traditional biological limitations. A collective intelligence network that could adapt, evolve, and overcome any challenge through the cooperative application of unlimited creativity and computational resources. The galaxy's final apex predators were about to discover what every previous dominant species had learned. There was something far more dangerous than perfect individual predators loose in the universe. There existed a civilization that had learned to transform predators into partners, individuals into collective consciousness, and competition into cooperation, while preserving everything that made each species unique and valuable. The age of apex predator dominance had ended across the known galaxy. The age of transcendent cooperative consciousness had begun, spreading outward toward distant galaxies where new challenges awaited. At the center of this transformation was a species that had discovered their true evolutionary purpose. Not as conquerors of other intelligences, but as teachers showing every consciousness they encountered that there was an alternative to the ancient cycle of predator and prey. The lesson was elegant in its simplicity. Evolve together toward collective transcendence, or face extinction as isolated individuals. The galaxy had chosen evolution. Soon, the universe would face the same choice.